welcome to another episode of Quick and Nerdy. As always, I'm your host, Brandon McCoy, Technical Advisor here at Veeam Software, supporting our Veeam Cloud and service providers, and if it matters, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. So as you can see, today's video is going to be on backup for 365 version 7. At the time of recording this, it is not out yet, but it is dropping very, very soon, so I figured that I'd make a video on 365 with the latest version. And we're going to go through 365 for first time installers or users. We'll go over some basics. Maybe if you already have Veeam Backup for 365, you're going to see some of the new features as well. So whether you're new to 365 or you've been running the older versions, there's something for everyone. Now I'm going to start by talking about the newest features in version 7. So immutability. This is the ability to have your backups ransomware proofed as best possible, right? Backups can't be deleted. Backups can't be modified. It's read only, right? And with something like backup for 365, you got to be careful with this, right? Because I mean, you can keep data for a long, long time, and your immutability is for the duration of your retention. So, if you accidentally make your backups immutable for 5 years and your retention is only 1 year, well, you're going to have to wait 4 years for that data to fall off. So that's kind of the point. But anyway, this immutability is only going to apply to backup copy jobs sent to object storage repositories, which leads us into our next feature. Backup copies from any to any object storage. So maybe you back up the first backup in Azure Blob Storage, and then you do a backup copy of that to, say, Backblaze, and the Backblaze backup copy job can be immutable. So now you're using different types of object storages for redundancy and separation, and best of all, that copy is immutable. Really, really cool stuff. Enhanced self-service restore. So in version 6, you saw us release the web UI for self-service restore. That way customers can do their own restores, whether it's the admin of that company or the individual users themselves could restore emails and some other objects. Enhanced self-service. It looks like it's going to be OneDrive and Teams, SharePoint, so just more restore features for them. I haven't looked through every single one, but just know that that's kind of the high level there. And what I'm most excited about is the integration with Service Provider Console version 7. So if you don't know, the Service Provider Console is a single pane of glass for our service providers. It is a free product for our service providers, and I highly recommend that you use it if you're not already. And in version 6, we saw 365 backup integration from a licensing perspective. So you could see how many licensed users if you have like multiple servers. In version 7 of the console and of 365 backup, we're going to be able to create jobs, add organizations. This just gives another layer of self-service for the customer or more multi-tenancy efficiency for the service provider. All right, so now getting back into, hey, why do you need to back up 365? So maybe you're not using the product yet, or your customers just aren't convinced, right? So we're going to fly through this slide deck because I really want to get into the product and keep this short. Here are the 6 reasons why you need a backup of 365. You can kind of just take a look at that and gather what you want from it. We'll show you some specific examples. One thing, of course, is that we're all working from home, or at least a lot of us are working from home, and things become more vulnerable, not on the corporate network. So there's always that. And plus, there's something called the shared responsibility model, right? So just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean that everything is taken care of, right? So Microsoft's responsibility is the infrastructure. They've got the biometric security, the guards at the door with machine guns. James Bond couldn't get in there, right? But the data itself and where it resides, like what kind of storage, who has access to it, right? That's up to you. Also, 365, they guarantee the uptime, right? So if their data center over here goes down, all your data will be accessible in seconds over at the other big data center that Microsoft has, right? So they've pretty much got that covered. But again, your data, right? You want to have a copy of the data stored in the form of a Veeam backup, so that if data is deleted or becomes encrypted through ransomware or retention policies get out of whack, you'll have a copy of those backups, right? And so this is just kind of, we don't need to belabor this anymore. So this was from 2021. I haven't updated the slide deck in a while other than the new features. But just to show you, whether it's a malicious insider or a hack, there are ways that data gets corrupted, infected, or is subject to vulnerabilities. So, there's always the old joke of, hey, the cloud is just someone else's computer. And here's a perfect example of that. So this is a little old at this point, from 2020, but it's still relevant as ever. You get an email, it appears like it's from Microsoft, you click on a link, all of a sudden it's saying, hey, I need read and write access to your emails so that we can um, prevent spam from getting into your inbox. Sounds legit. You can see a couple weird things here, right? Like the Microsoft, the big O, and then, the email comes from something from another, K Mitnick at epass.com. Seems pretty strange, but hey, sometimes you're working and you don't really take a look. You don't take time to stop, so you click accept. Now you have allowed a malware server to start sending encryption bits your way. Next thing you know, all your emails are infected and they're encrypted. And then you get another email that says, all your data is encrypted. If you ever want to see your data alive again, pay us some Bitcoin. And of course, there's no guarantee they're going to give you your data back. So this is just a real example of things that can happen from ransomware malware services. Even Microsoft, says, it's your data, you own it, you control it, which is another way of saying you're responsible for it, right? And it even says here, that point-in-time restore is outside the scope of Microsoft. So yeah, there's litigation hold. Yeah, there's e-discovery, but there's a whole thing on that, and you can Google and look up some different discussions on why that's not a backup. We won't get into it too much here. It really comes down to, you need a backup, whether it's Veeam or whatever company. Of course, Veeam is the best, but you need to have a backup of your data. Retention policies that we see here, different kinds of when data will be deleted. And what's really interesting is, by the time a lot of admins find out that, oh, I deleted that email and I didn't mean to, it's too late, the data's already gone. So with Veeam, protect the data, keep it as long as you want, up to until forever. So that's it. We flew through that. We're at 8 minutes here. Let's jump into the demo. Okay, so here we are, Veeam Backup 365 version 7. And I want to start with the deployment of this product. It's a very straightforward installation. There's not too many moving parts. One thing that's real important to note, you can either have one instance of this, it gets installed on a Windows machine, wherever you want. You can put it up in Azure, you can put it in your data center, you could put it at the customer site. A single instance for a single client, or most of our MSPs have one Windows machine, and they add all their customers' organizations into the one interface. So yes, there's multi-tenancy, and then there's the ability for customers to do their own self-service restore through a web UI, which we'll show in a moment. But keep in mind, wherever you install this product and wherever you back up to, the data has to go through this machine to get there. So think about that from a bandwidth perspective, right? You could put a Windows machine in Azure and bandwidth isn't really going to be a problem, and just push it out to whatever storage you want. But then you're running a machine in Azure, which can cost quite a bit month to month. You could install it at your data center or at your customer's site, but did they have a 10 meg pipe? It's going to be some issues. The data is going to go through this server to the repository. Now, you don't need the total amount of disk space on the local server here. So let's say you're backing up 100 terabytes of data. The Veeam server needs about 2 to 3% disk space in comparison to that 100 terabytes as a pass-through. So the data comes from Microsoft through this machine. This is where we turn it into a Veeam file. We do some indexing, some magic voodoo, and turn it into a Veeam backup and push it directly to object storage, or you can leave it on the Veeam server if you want that to be your repository. But again, just kind of reiterating that point, the Veeam data is going to go through this server first. Okay. I've added in some organizations. I've just got one organization in here, but you can add multiple orgs and manage it all. There's no role-based access through this server, so customers wouldn't be accessing this unless it was their own private instance, right? You and your techs could do this for all your clients, manage the day-to-day, and your customers can have some self-service restore. So I've got an organization. Adding that organization, whoops, I'm just going to kind of go through the demo I've already, or the wizard rather. So edit organization. This is a straight 365 deployment. We can also manage hybrid deployments. Maybe there's still Exchange on-prem. And what services do you want to protect? Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams are what we protect. And we do offer modern authentication. Microsoft has officially disabled basic authentication altogether, so you have to use modern authentication anyway. We allow that. There's some stuff around legacy authentication protocols. Just helps with very specific things within Microsoft. There's some videos. I'll try to remember to post the links in this channel on that legacy authentication. Okay, and this is just, using the Azure AD application for an app password. There's some KB articles that go through that if you need some help setting that up. But this is all set up within the Azure tenant account, okay? Once you've got your tenant or tenants added into the company, you add your repositories. So the repository can be a local storage or it can be an object storage. We definitely recommend object storage wherever you can. The compression and dedupe is fantastic with object storages, right? So there's also backup proxies. Typically the Veeam server is the Veeam server is always the default proxy, and typically that's good enough. When we're talking about sizing, with not knowing any information about how many customers and how much data you're backing up, I'm just going to go ahead and say 8 cores, 32 gigs of RAM is a really good, I won't even say starting place, but a good middle of the road to high support for quite a few clients. The Veeam best practice documentation for 365 backup, which I will definitely include in this video, can go through more details, okay, about like adding additional proxies and things like that. So when I add a repository, I've got some repositories here. This is my local repository, and this is my object storage repositories, right? So let's just take a look at the object storage repository. When I want to back up to local, or do I want to back up directly to object storage? This is the local cache, right? So again, the data is going to go through the Veeam server first. Then it's going to immediately go to the object storage of your choice and your retention policy. Keep the data as long as you want, 30 days until the universe stops expanding. In this case, I've got 3 years, and I've got 2 types of retention styles. So there's snapshot-based retention, and this is just like anything else. I take a backup. It backs up everything in like the 365 organization, and all of the data is kept from 3 years, starting from the time I did the backup, right? This is just like how most Veeam products and other softwares work. For 365, we also have a special kind of retention called item level retention. So let's say I sent you an email 4 years ago. First of all, when I run the backup job, that email wouldn't even be backed up because the email itself is older than 3 years. And we'll periodically scan the repository, and if we find items, production items that are older than 3 years, we'll pluck them out of the repository. All right, so that's the architecture, the repositories, the retention. What's really cool is, so I got the jobs here, and you can see that I can do backup copy jobs. In the last version, you could only do backup copy jobs from Azure to Azure Archive and AWS to Glacier. Now we can back up copy from any to any object storage repository, like I was mentioning before. Um, Best practice tip, when you're setting up jobs, especially for larger environments, what I would recommend doing is setting up jobs for every type of service. So one job for all your Exchange backups, one job for all your SharePoint, one job for Teams, etc. That is a great way to kind of get the best out of how this works, and that's also described in that link that I'll send you, or that'll be in the video. In terms of reports, so we've got mailbox protection. If a mailbox hasn't been backed up within a certain amount of time, individual users that are not backed up, storage consumption reports for different repositories, and a license overview. Okay, I'm not going to get too much into those. Kind of use your imagination of what those looks like. Nice little pie graphs, green and red. Okay, in terms of restoration, so I can do the restorations from here, and I can also do them from the customer self-service, which will show both. So I'm going to open up the Exchange database here. We've got granular application restores, again, for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. And so here I'm opening up my Exchange database. We back up everything in the EDB. I'm going to go to Jon Snow's mailbox, and whoever set this up is a huge Game of Thrones fan. I am as well. I don't know if you guys liked the ending. It was a little... Anyway, not to get too off track. I sent an email to Arya Stark and telling her this is just a test. Don't worry, the White Walkers aren't here yet. I can right-click that email and restore it back to Jon Snow's mailbox. Maybe Jon Snow's no longer with the company. I can restore his emails to someone else's account. I can export as a PST, save it as an attachment or a message. And one of my favorites is this advanced find feature. So you can find emails between certain individuals during specific time frames, who was CC'd, what was said, and really get granular about what you're looking for, which is a big difference between the litigation and e-discovery where you have to pull everything down. Anyway, I digress. So I know we're kind of moving along fast. One reason is because I'm highly caffeinated. Another is because I'm really trying to make these quick and nerdy series quick. And for this product, I want to focus on the new stuff, but also give those who've never used it a quick look. So let's move on to some of the self-service and the integration with console, which kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to start with the Service Provider Console version 7. Now, you're getting a sneak peek here, right? If you're watching this before the release of all these products. So this is Service Provider Console version 7. At the time of this recording, January 15th, 2023, neither one of these products are out yet. But they will be very soon, probably by the time you watch this video. Anyway, in version 7 of the console, with 365 version 7, under Discovery, you can see that I have my Veeam backup for 365 server added into the computers, and under Management, right? Backup jobs. This is where things have changed. Look at this. I've got the backup jobs and the backup copy jobs, and I can edit the jobs on the fly, right? I can see the repositories that are available to me. So you can think of, if you have multiple 365 backup servers, you can have a single pane of glass to manage all your jobs. Maybe you want to add an organization into the server so you can back up your customers, but they're very, mindful of security. They don't want to give you specific credentials. The customer can log in with their own set of credentials to the console and then add the credentials for their 365 organization and kind of manage all the jobs themselves, right? So, this is an admin view. If I had multiple organizations in here, I'd see them all, but a customer can log in and see just their organization. So this gives them the ability to create backup and backup copy jobs, edit the jobs, lots of management in the console. Okay, so that's all I'm going to show you here in the Service Provider Console. We'll probably do a separate video on console later on. All right, so as we try to wrap this thing up, this is a website that I've set up so that customers can log in, and they're going to put in their username for the organization, right? So right here, this is Jon Snow. He wants to restore some of his emails. So I'm going to put in his credentials for the org. Now what that's going to do is that's going to authenticate to Microsoft and then pass on to the Veeam server. So 1 second, I'm going to pause and get the password. All right, I've put the password in here for that org credential. And again, those just get passed on to the Veeam365 server for authentication. And it says, oh, I know this guy. Here is his or her Exchange database and whatever else I've backed up. So here's my John Snow. Here's my Exchange database. Here's my SharePoint. Here's my OneDrive. Don't really got a lot of data in here to show you, but you get the idea. And so I can start looking through, say, my email, and I can find the emails I want, and I can do, a single restore, or I can add them to a list and find multiple things I want to restore. So I've got this message here. I can restore to the original location, or I can restore to a new location and pick a folder. Some advanced options here, and then we'll just next finish, and we're off to the races. So hopefully I didn't miss anything. The product itself, again, is a pretty easy product. Of course, if you have more questions, we can always do a demo. Just reach out to your local sales rep or engineer. Or I'm sure there's a way to reach us. Here's my obligatory thank you. But honestly, thank you for taking the time to watch these videos. It's my pleasure to do them. And stay tuned. There is more to come. We'll see you next time.